I always knew I ranked second in my mother's life, but I never imagined the day would come when she would say it out loud through her actions. Our family business had been built slowly year after year, from a tiny storefront that smelled of dust and burnt coffee into a company that finally paid all the bills on time. I grew up inside those walls, doing homework on shipping boxes, learning inventory before I learned algebra, answering phones while my friends were still sleeping in on weekends. It never felt like a sacrifice. It felt like belonging. My sister arrived later, bright and charming, always praised for things that came easily to her. I was the steady one, the one who stayed late, who fixed problems without being asked. Somehow, that turned into invisibility. Meetings started happening without me. Decisions were made in hushed tones that stopped when I entered the room. My mother began praising my sister's vision, even though she barely showed up except for photo opportunities and ribbon cuttings. The day everything broke apart didn't come with shouting. It came quietly, with my mother sliding a stack of papers across her desk and explaining that the company needed a new direction. The words were gentle, but the meaning was brutal. My position was being eliminated. My sister would be stepping in to lead. I wasn't angry at first, just confused, staring at the same signature line I had signed 1,000 times for vendors and suppliers, now asked to sign away my place in the only world I knew. I packed my things that afternoon while everyone pretended to be busy. No one stopped me. No one asked how I would manage. The keys to the office door felt heavier than they ever had as I placed them on the counter for the last time. Walking out, I told myself it was just a setback, that loyalty and hard work always find their way back home. But standing on the sidewalk with my belongings in a cardboard box, I finally admitted the truth I had avoided my whole life. In my mother's story, I was never meant to be the hero, only the extra who made the stars shine brighter. And as the door locked behind me, a quiet resolve took root that I wouldn't beg to be written back into a chapter that had already erased me. For weeks after I was pushed out, I drifted through my days like someone who had misplaced their own identity. Every street reminded me of deliveries I had made. Every invoice number still lived in my head, and yet I was no longer welcome to the place that had shaped my entire adult life. I tried not to check the company website, but curiosity always won. My sister's smiling photo had replaced mine on the leadership page, her bio polished with words like innovation and transformation, as if the years I spent holding the operation together had never existed. Friends from the industry began calling quietly, not with congratulations, but with concern. Orders were delayed. Suppliers were confused by sudden changes. Longtime clients were being handled by people who didn't understand their history. I listened without commenting, afraid that if I spoke too much, bitterness would give me away. Still, the pattern was clear. My sister was redesigning everything from the top down, eager to prove her worth, unaware that the foundation she stood on had cracks she didn't know how to see. My mother, who had once trusted me with every decision, now spoke to me only in formal updates, as if I were a distant consultant rather than her own child. She assured me the transition was going smoothly, that the company finally had the energy it needed to grow. But the reassurance sounded rehearsed, like something she repeated to silence doubts she didn't want to face. I wondered how long it would take before she realized that momentum without memory is just motion without direction. I didn't wait for things to fall apart. I took the skills I had learned in silence and rebuilt myself elsewhere. I started consulting for small businesses that were struggling the way ours once had, helping them streamline operations, negotiate with vendors, and avoid the mistakes that nearly crushed us in the early years. The work was humbling at first, stepping into rooms where no one knew my history, but it was also freeing. My worth was no longer measured by family loyalty, only by results. Meanwhile, the news from my former company grew harder to ignore. A major contract was lost after a misunderstanding over delivery terms. Employees I had trained for years began leaving, one by one, seeking stability they no longer felt. Even customers who had stayed through our roughest seasons were quietly moving on, tired of explaining their needs to people who only understood spreadsheets. The real turning point came when my mother called late one night, her voice stripped of its practiced confidence. She didn't ask for advice. She didn't even apologize. She just spoke about pressure, about board members questioning decisions, about my sister being overwhelmed by responsibilities she had never prepared for. I listened, heart steady, finally understanding that the imbalance I had carried for so long was tipping back in ways no one could script. After that call, I stopped feeling like a victim of something unfair and started seeing the larger pattern. I had been removed, not because I lacked value, but because my consistency made others feel too comfortable ignoring the work behind success. Now that comfort was gone, and with it the illusion that titles alone could hold a business together. I didn't celebrate their struggle, but I also didn't rush to fix it. I had already learned the lesson that took them years to face. Being pushed aside can either break you or quietly prepare you for something stronger. The call that changed everything didn't come from my mother. It came from one of the oldest clients our company had, someone who had watched me grow from a teenager stacking shelves into the person who kept their account running smoothly year after year. They told me the contract was being terminated, not because the business no longer needed our services, but because the trust was gone. I didn't interfere. I simply wished them well and closed the chapter that had once defined me. A month later, my mother finally showed up at my door, not with papers or instructions, but with exhaustion written into every movement. She spoke about missed deadlines, about investors pulling back, about my sister struggling under the weight of responsibilities she had never taken seriously. For the first time in my life, I didn't rush to rescue anyone. I told her I had built something of my own now, something that didn't require me to trade my dignity for approval. The silence that followed was heavy, but it wasn't cruel. It was honest. She left without arguing, and I realized that karma rarely arrives with drama. It comes quietly, revealing what was already fragile. My sister wasn't a villain, just a symbol of everything my mother had mistaken for progress. And my mother wasn't heartless, only blind to the cost of favoring appearances over substance. Today, my work is steady, my reputation earned in rooms where no one knows my family name. I don't measure success by who finally admits they were wrong. I measure it by the calm that fills my life now, the absence of that old ache to be chosen. Losing the family business felt like being erased, but in truth, it was an unintentional gift. It forced me to stop waiting for a place at someone else's table and build one of my own. Karma didn't return what was taken from me. It showed me why I was never meant to keep it.